Anybody? Yes?
Interested in law.
You're interested in law. You wanted to be a lawyer, right? You raise your hand? Yes?
I want to like help kids my age and just like help the world.
Yeah, help the world and help kids your age. I love that. Anybody else?
Yeah, I want to help understand people better.
That's a very good reason. A very good reason. Anybody else? Yeah,
I wanted to get involved in my community.
I love it. You guys are all good kids. Where do you guys go to school? Just start shouting them out. Okay. You go where?
I'm going in time.
Okay. So you guys are all over the. Do any of you guys were you friends before this? Have any of you had siblings that went through this program before? Yeah? Some of you? You have like older siblings that were volunteers? Yeah. So I got involved with this program when I first moved to Las Vegas in 2011, which I think is probably before some of you guys were born. And the reason I got involved is because back then we did a program called Trial by Peers here, and I was actually in a teen court program, which was very similar back when I was 14 years old. So that's how long I've been involved in programs like this, these pre-trial diversion programs. For me, I knew I wanted to be an attorney, so it was really important to me to go and be involved in a program like this. I went to high school in the South, and I don't know if any of you guys are from the South, but basically the only thing that matters when you're in the South in high school is like football, and obviously I wasn't playing football. So it was really cool to find that teen court program because I knew I wanted to be an attorney. We were doing full-blown jury trials back then, and so by the time I graduated from high school, I'd already done over 100 jury trials, which was super cool. Allowed me the opportunity to really get comfortable public speaking, and allowed me the opportunity then to make the mock trial team when I was an undergrad, and then captain my last year, and then when I was in law school, I did mock trial and captain, and then when I started practicing, I was very comfortable in front of a jury at that point, and very comfortable in a courtroom, and so I had all those skills. So you guys, if you want to be attorneys, and even if you don't want to be attorneys, but for those of you that do, you guys are in the right spot. You guys are going to learn a lot of skills, and I think you'll be able to apply to later points throughout kind of your journey getting to the courtroom. For those of you that don't want to be attorneys, what do you guys want to do? So those of you that don't want to be an attorney, raise your hand. Okay, I knew lots of you. It was like 2/3 of you didn't. What do you want to do?
Criminal psychology.
Okay, that's a big deal. All right, what about you?
I want to be an actor.
Okay, well, there's lots of acting skills in this as well. So I was brought in, I was asked to talk to you guys about communication. I had I like to click through my slideshow, but I put this together for you guys. So this is my firm, it's called Bighorn Law. We have an office on Cheyenne. That's like a rough sketch of it. So if you've ever driven on Cheyenne, you might have seen us in the north part of town. We have 85 total team members. I'm one of 3 owners of the firm. So I'm an attorney, but I'm also a business owner. That's a big group of our team. We did Letterman jackets for the holidays. So we gave everyone, you guys know what a Letterman jacket is? They're kind of retro. Anyway, we gave everybody a Letterman jacket with their last name on it, and it says 23 on the front because that was the year that we gave them out. So that's all of us in our Letterman jackets there, celebrating the holidays. And that's just a small part of our team. Like I said, there's 85 of us total. We have about 16 attorneys. And the work that we do is personal injury. So we don't have billboards, we don't do television commercials. We get our cases from just word of mouth, people like you who, or maybe we're in a crash and maybe refer somebody. That's what we do. So we're very, very involved in the community. We have an ice cream trailer that's we're getting ready to roll out. So it'll go to all nonprofit events and hand out free ice cream cones to everybody. So we love Las Vegas, we love our community, and we do all personal injury, which a lot of times people think of as like the car crash, like think of, everybody knows Glenn Lerner's, jingle, so we think of like Glenn Lerner and stuff like that, but it's actually so much more than that. We do medical malpractice, so when somebody maybe has a surgery and it doesn't go as planned, maybe the doctor makes a mistake, and they're very seriously hurt, we do that type of work. When somebody slips and falls or gets hurt on like an elevator or an escalator, we do all that kind of stuff. So much more than just a car crash. That's the kind of law that we do. And I've been practicing since 2011. I shared with you when I moved to Vegas. So what is that? Just over 13 years now, which feels like forever because I think it's probably older than some of you. So the reason that I think that they wanted me to talk to you guys about communication is in addition to being an attorney, I do a lot of other things as part of the firm. Sorry, I'm not used to using this iPad. Let's see if I can. There we go. All right, so I do a lot of different things in addition to just practicing law. So I do a lot of film work. So I'm very comfortable if you were to put a video camera in front of me, I'd feel very, very comfortable talking. I also do a lot of social media posts and a lot of social media videos. Some of these I spend so much time working on where I'll like write everything out. I did a whole analysis of when all the Taylor Swift stuff happened in 2022 and the Swifties were mad because they couldn't get their Taylor Swift tickets and it was a big mess, right? So I did a whole series. I spent so much time researching that. And later that night, I made a really silly video where I tell people not to get on a bird scooter. And of course, that one goes viral, and the one that I spent 3 hours preparing doesn't, because that's just the way that it works sometimes with social media. I do a lot of panel discussions, so because I'm a little bit of a subject matter expert as far as like running a law firm, I speak a lot on that. And then I do a lot of solo discussions. So I've spoken in front of up to 1,600 people in one sitting, and I speak in particular in front of other lawyers quite a bit. And if you guys know lawyers, they can be a little bit of a discerning crowd. They're not always like the best crowd to speak in front of. So I have a lot of experience public speaking, and that's what I want to talk to you guys a little bit about today, is just communication and how to do it. So that said, who here, is anybody here like nervous about public speaking? I think probably most of you, right? Yeah. So we're gonna talk a little bit more about that, but I wanna break you guys of that a little bit today. This is the 3rd week that you guys have been together. Have you guys gotten to make friends and gotten to know each other a little bit? No? Not at all? Okay. So those of you, raise your hand one more time if you want to go to law school, if you want to be a lawyer. So quite a few of you, okay. And so, is that a halfway? You halfway want to be a lawyer?
Yeah.
All right. So the way it's been, I didn't teach last year, but normally when I teach this class, I like to teach it the same way that we are taught in law school. And by doing that, we use something called the Socratic method. So the Socratic method is named after a guy named Socrates, and when I finish telling you this, you're gonna know why he looks kind of grouchy in that bottom corner. So the Socratic method, for those of you that wanna go to law school, this is exactly how it works. I'm not making this up, okay? When you walk into a law school class, you will have like 3 cases that you should have read the night before. And what will happen is you'll be sitting in a room just like this, and the professor will just start calling on you. Sometimes they have you, whatever seat you're in now, they'll say you cannot move the rest of the year, you have to write your name down. The professor will memorize your name and they will just randomly call on you. You're on the spot. And in front of everyone, you have to answer really, really detailed questions about the cases that you read. And it's not just factual questions like, you know, what happened to John Doe. It's not like that. It will be really detailed questions that are meant to challenge the way that you think about that case, or to challenge your original assertion in the way that you thought about that. The whole point of that is to do a couple things. One, it's to get you to start doing what we call thinking like a lawyer, where you can think on your feet and you can think really quickly about what the right answer is. But the other part of that is we have to get you guys comfortable with public speaking. Because as a lawyer, almost no matter what type of law you practice, unless you're maybe an appellate lawyer, where you sit in a back office and you just write briefs all day, which some of you might want to do, and those are very important lawyers, the vast majority of you are going to have some sort of public facing, where you're going to have to either speak in front of large audiences, or you're going to have to meet with clients, interview witnesses, interview clients, anything like that, where you're going to have to do something that requires you to engage. And so the idea behind that is we want to get you guys up and talking and stuff like that. So the way that I teach this is I like to teach it the exact same way that you guys are going to be exposed to when you're in law school. So a couple things with that, okay? Number 1, when I call, I'm going to ask for a volunteer first. If there are no volunteers, or if I get the same person over and over again volunteering, we're not going to let that happen. I'm going to start calling on somebody else. Don't be embarrassed. Just know if you get the embarrassment out now, you're not going to be embarrassed in law school. I had a contracts professor that would not allow us to use pronouns in class, and that the reason why is he said pronouns are vague when it comes to contract law. So we had to say stuff like this. You couldn't say, well, he went to his friend's house. Well, he would say, you can't say that because we don't know who he is and we don't know who his is. So we have to say the plaintiff went to the plaintiff's house to get the plaintiff's jacket to then go to the defendant's house to drop off the defendant's purse or whatever it was, right? And so for me personally, I got called, it was my day, and I didn't know it was gonna be my day, and it was the morning after our big like school-wide Halloween party where I had stayed out all night. It's like an 8 a.m. class. And so these are the things you don't wanna do, so you can just get the embarrassment out over with now. I can promise you every answer I said that day was wrong. I used all the pronouns I shouldn't have used, and I got completely yelled at in front of everybody. So just know when you wanna go to law school, that's definitely what you're getting yourself into. And so don't be embarrassed, because I promise I've had it way worse. I've done way dumber stuff. Fair? All right. So number 3, similar to an attorney in court, you guys have to stand when you talk. I'm gonna have you guys do that. So I know that this is a little bit different than in a courtroom setting, but when we're in court, we always stand when we address the judge. It's a sign of respect. It also really puts all the focus on the speaker because everybody else is hushed when that person is speaking. That's where the attention's drawn. We try not to speak over each other, and it's just a sign of respect to the court system as a whole. So I'm gonna ask you guys to stand up when you're speaking, and I'm gonna ask you guys to tell me your name. If you want, you can give your first name, you can give me your last name, whatever it is, or whatever you want us to call you, okay? It's gonna be hard for me to remember all of them, so I'm gonna have you guys repeat your name every single time. Maybe I'll remember a couple of them by the end. Finally, if you get stuck, please don't worry, you guys are allowed to ask co-counsel. So, what that means is this. Let's say hypothetically you know nobody in this room, there's nobody that you trust. If you see that somebody is stuck, you can raise your hand and you can volunteer as their co-counsel if you know the answer to it. But if not, you guys can always ask a friend and ask to confer with co-counsel, the way that we say it in court. And so you guys are allowed to do that, so don't feel like if I put you on the spot that you're all alone. When we try cases as lawyers, we never try them alone, ever. We always have co-counsel. Sometimes, in my firm, when we even do something like pick a jury, we'll have 4 lawyers at the table. There's 4 of us doing that. And that's because the whole thing is too big for one person. So sometimes these questions, don't be afraid to call in a friend because they're just too big for one person to answer. Don't be afraid of that, okay? Is that fair? All right. So I said this, don't worry. This is happy Socrates. There's gonna be candy. I do have candy that I brought. Some of it has peanuts, so please don't pick that if you're allergic. But I'll pass this around if you guys want to pick at some candy while we go. For every time that you guys get something right, I'll start passing this bag to you. Is that fair? All right. Usually I bring Smarties, but we couldn't find them at the store. So I like to give Smarties when you guys are smart. Okay. I always like to start with a roadmap. Who here, has anybody done mock trial when they were in high school? Yes. All right. Stand up. What's your name?
My name is Bryce.
Bryce, when you do mock trial in high school, what part did you play?
I do attorney witness, so I do attorney on defense and then witness on prosecution.
Did you open or close?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
The last time I did, I didn't.
Were you there when they were doing, like, practicing or planning what your opening was gonna look like?
Yeah.
Did you ever hear anybody refer to the opening as a roadmap?
No.
Okay, so a roadmap, thank you Bryce, you can sit. So a roadmap, I always like to, when I start giving any kind of presentation, if I'm you in your chair, I kind of want to know where is this all going, right? Have you ever like listened to somebody and you're like, where the heck is this person going with whatever they're saying to me? Well, I like to just tell you, and that's called the roadmap. So in an opening statement, if you want to be a lawyer when you're in court, an opening statement is the first thing that you say to a jury, and you're kind of laying out for them exactly what your case is going to look like. Maybe not all of it, you always want to have a couple surprises, but for the most part, you're really laying out the roadmap. So my roadmap for you guys today, we're going to talk about really 2 big things. One, we're going to talk about how to conduct a one-on-one communication with referred youth, witnesses, and victims. And 2, something completely different, we're going to talk about how to advocate for your client, which could be either the referred youth or the community in the youth restorative program, because those are 2 really different types of communication techniques. Who else here did mock trial in high school? Go ahead, stand up and introduce yourself.
I'm Grace.
Grace, what did you do in high school?
I was an attorney for both sides.
Okay,
And then I
did you
did the
open or close?
closing.
You closed. Okay, so close is very different. This is
Yes.
argument, which is way more fun than an opening statement. And so when you would do your closing, same thing, would you give a roadmap? Would you kind of outline at the beginning what you were going to talk about?
No.
Would you get nervous before you closed?
A little bit, yeah.
I would always get more nervous in closing because it's a little more off the cuff. Opening can be completely planned. You can memorize the entire thing and not mess it up. But closing, you have to rebut evidence that maybe came out 20 minutes before, so you have to be on your feet and ready to go. Are you doing mock trial again?
Yes.
Good. Which high school?
Coronado.
Coronado. That's amazing. I did a little coaching with Coronado, but it would have been about 10 years ago. All right, so next up, so let's talk about you guys. So everyone that's here, whether you want to be an attorney or not, what you guys are kind of all signing up to be is an advocate. So an advocate is both a noun and a verb. It can mean 2 different things. So there's an advocate, which is the noun, and then what you guys do as an advocate is you advocate, which is the verb. So I defined it a little bit here. This is just from Webster's. So an advocate, which is what you guys all want to do, is one who defends or maintains a cause or proposal, one who supports or promotes the interests of a cause or group, and one who pleads the cause of another. So as an advocate, you guys are either advocating, which is the verb form of that, for either the community stakeholders or the referred youth. You guys ready to do that? Yeah. So I put this in here because I want you guys to know that what you guys are getting ready to do is so very important. For me as an attorney, I think that my role as an advocate is hands down the most important thing that I do each and every day. As a lawyer, for me, my job is to give a voice to the voiceless. So not only do I have the ability to navigate the court system, I know how to file a complaint, when the complaint should be filed, I know how to serve it, I know how to do all that kind of really technical stuff that the rules require. But in addition to that, as a lawyer, I have a special set of skills that allow me to be a die-hard advocate for whatever position I need to take at any given time. Sometimes that means that I don't always agree with maybe what my client did or what my client's position is. Technically, I don't have to personally agree with it. It's still my job to advocate on their behalf. Does that make sense? So sometimes, if you think of our justice system, right? I'm going to go to the way extreme, right? We have people who do really, really bad crime, and under the U.S. Constitution, they are still entitled to an attorney. Everyone is entitled to an attorney, and that's why we have what's called the public defender's office, right? So, is anybody here familiar with knows what a public defender is? Okay, somebody new, stand on up. What's your name?
Alex.
Alex. What do you know about a public defender?
A public defender is somebody that is assigned to you if you have nobody who can or you can't afford your defense attorney.
Where do you go to high school?
What?
Where do you go to school?
I'm not in, Pinecrest Locator.
Okay. And so, how do you know what a public defender does?
I do a bit of research on my own,
Yeah. And so, in public defenders, they represent what are called indigent clients, so clients who cannot afford an attorney. It's actually like a pretty low bar. Pretty much if you tell the court, I can't afford an attorney, you're gonna get a public defender. Sometimes they want you to prove that, but for the most part, they're gonna assign anybody. Do you know anyone who's a public defender?
No.
Okay, thank you. So a public defender, sometimes they have to represent clients who've done really, really crazy stuff. Like maybe, they could have really hurt somebody, they could have killed someone, they could have done something really bad. And I know a lot of public defenders, and I can tell you they're not bad people. But what they are, they're advocates. So they themselves, they don't have to condone the action of their client, but it's their job to make sure that the process is fair for their client, right? Ultimately, I think that if the person did it, and everybody does what they're supposed to do, the judge does what the judge is supposed to do, the prosecutor does what they're supposed to do, the witnesses and the police do what they're supposed to do, no matter what that public defender does, that person's probably going to go to prison. They're probably gonna be found guilty. But everyone deserves an advocate in our country, so that means that even if it's somebody who you don't necessarily agree with their actions or agree with what they did, they're still entitled to that. That's what our law really allows for. So you guys are stepping into this really incredible role that is so important to the fundamentals of what our country believes in and stands for, and in my opinion, really what sets our country apart from every other country that has a completely inferior justice system to us. And I'm talking about the Soviet system, Russia, all of those countries. It's a very uniquely American thing to have that, to have counsel like that. So as an advocate, you're in this tremendous position of power, and it's important that you guys take that really, really seriously. And that's why I wanted to define this for you. So to advocate is a little bit different. It's to support or argue for a cause or a policy. It's to plead in favor, and it's to act as an advocate for someone or something. So whether you are, let's say hypothetically, in your guys' case, let's say that you are appointed as an advocate for the community, and it's your job to argue about the effect that maybe a fight had on a community, like a school and the other kids in the school system. And yes, we can all agree that yes, a fight in a school can be really distracting and it can disrupt learning, right? We can all agree on that. But who here has seen a fight and everyone seemed really entertained? Yes, go ahead and stand up. What's your name? I know, I'm sorry. You can call in co-counsel if you want. I know, she's here to cheer you on. I know. What's your name, my dear?
My name is Manun, and I've seen a lot of school fights where like fist fights in my school, and everyone someone's always like cheering them on, having their
Yeah.
phone out, recording it,
Yeah.
recording that fight, and then the teacher is always try to stop it.
Yeah. So in other words, would you say that when in the fights that you've seen, do all of the people watching the fight necessarily seem terrified?
No, they're always having fun. They have a smile on their face, and they are always like recording. And there's like pages on Instagram where they post the fights for everyone else to see, when
Yeah.
if they didn't see it.
But you would agree too, though, that even in that circumstance where everybody seems really entertained, it's pretty disruptive, right?
Yeah.
So you could argue, if you were on behalf of the community, as an advocate for the community, that regardless of the entertainment value, it's really disruptive to learning.
Yeah.
So that's taking a position. I mean, have you ever watched a fight and been entertained? It's okay. Yes. Yeah, me too. Listen, I've watched a fight and been entertained. That's okay. So, so sometimes you have to take a position as a community advocate or as a youth advocate that maybe you don't always 100% agree with, but it's your role and your job to advocate on that on their behalf. There are lots of people who do this for a living, and not just lawyers. There have certainly been times that I've had what I will refer to as less than smart clients who have done things that I less than agree with. But it's my job to help navigate them through that system, and I still have to represent them, and I still have to advocate for them. It doesn't mean that it gives me permission to lie or to make things up. That's not what I'm talking about. But I'm talking about being a fierce advocate for them, because that's a very important role that our society puts upon all of us. And you guys are stepping into that really important role, and I hope you know how honored you should feel to get to do that. So, let's talk about this. So, have you guys seen Lady Justice? You guys, are you familiar with that artwork right there? Yeah. So we have these a couple different places in our office. So Lady Justice is usually defined exactly like this. So she's always holding a set of scales, and the set of scales, they represent balancing the relative substance and the value, which is the weight of the available evidence, arguments on both sides. It really demonstrates that at any given time, there can be a tip of the scales. So for those of you that want to be lawyers or do mock trial when you're doing a criminal case, do you guys know what the, what is the, okay, of course I'm drawing a blank right now, but there's a burden of proof that you have to do. Do you guys know what that is? Go ahead, help out.
Beyond a reasonable doubt.
Beyond a reasonable doubt. And then do you know what it is in a civil case?
I do, but it's blanking my
That's
mind.
okay, it's by preponderance of the evidence. So in a criminal case, then everybody else out on it, because I think it's probably happened to all of us, and if it hasn't yet, then it will happen to you at some point in your life. Whether it's a friend or a significant other, or somebody that you met that you maybe liked, and they just drop off the face of the planet, they don't talk to you anymore, and you have no idea what you did wrong. That's what it's called, being ghosted, right? And it's the worst feeling. What it does is it leaves you on your side in mystery, and your brain starts reeling about what is it that I possibly did wrong. The reality is we kind of all know, well, you'll know as you get older. I think this like magical thing happens when you turn about 30 that you just don't care anymore, so you guys all have that to look forward to. But as you get older, you realize it probably has very little to do with you and has everything to do with their own dysfunction. But the result is still the same, right? It puts all of us just through so much torture. So my number one tip in communicating with anyone, especially a client, especially a witness, is I never, ever, ever want to leave them in mystery. I don't want to leave them in mystery about any part of this entire process. So if you are on the part of anybody as their advocate, whether it's a victim or a witness or the referred youth, you want to tell them exactly what's going to happen. You want to answer their questions, and you want to be available to them. The worst thing that you can do is leave them in mystery, because what's going to happen to them is their brains are going to start reeling about all the worst case scenarios. They're going to lose sleep over it, and it's just so unnecessary. So my number one communication tip with anyone, just don't do this to people. It's the worst feeling that you can put in anyone else. You have to be upfront and kind of face it and just let them know exactly what's going to happen. Sometimes even for me, I get nervous about calling a client. If I have to especially deliver bad news, which actually I have to do a lot. And so as the owner of the firm, I get to deliver the bad news for all the other lawyers too, because they're not the owner of the firm. So sometimes when cases are just not going the way that maybe the client needs them to go, it usually falls on me to be the one to pick up the phone and call them and say, here's the bad fact. Here's what your doctor said. This is why I can't prove this. This is why, I think the other car's saying you're at fault, whatever it is, right? And so I never want to leave them in mystery where they don't know what's going on. It's the worst thing that you can do to somebody. So my number one tip when you're communicating with anybody, don't leave them in mystery. You got to lay it out for them. When it's for me, for example, when I'm talking to a client and they're gonna have to testify, I like to even do everything. You guys won't have all these facts, but I will tell them exactly what the room will look like, where people will be sitting, who's going to say what the order is, because I want them to be able to picture it in their mind so they're not in mystery about what's gonna happen to them. So anything that you can do to take them out of mystery as fast as possible, your life is gonna be so much easier. You're gonna have the opportunity to make some real difference in their lives because they won't be as nervous about everything. All right, so I wanna talk to you guys about public speaking. I think we should take a little bit of a break, but real quick, give me a show of hands who here likes public speaking. Like actually likes it. I haven't even heard from you. What's your name?
My name is Nikki.
Nikki, you like public speaking?
Yes.
It doesn't scare you at all.
I mean, a little bit, but I really like
Do
it.
you still get nervous when you talk in front of everybody?
When there are people that I don't know.
So you don't know any, were you nervous just now?
A little bit.
A little bit, yeah. Okay, anybody else who really likes it? You like it, go ahead and say that. Thank you.
My name is Hermes, and I just really like talking to people. I like communicating with people a lot, and I'm just a really big talker. I just really like talking. My friends can actually,
They can vouch for that.
yeah, they can vouch for it.
I like to talk too, it's fun, so, all right, thank you. All right, so let's take, okay, so right now it is 6:49. So let's come back at 6:55, 6 minutes. You guys gotta use the bathroom, we'll fly through public speaking. You guys are gonna be pros by the end. All right, guys. Don't all talk at once, it's really old, right? And they're gonna be pointing at me with these like really big hands and a gavel. And it was gonna be absolutely terrifying. I think there's like even spit coming out of that guy's mouth. And so I was always so terrified at the very beginning that this is who I would be speaking in front of. So for you guys, when you think about public speaking, when you think about speaking in front of somebody, you guys are gonna have an attorney. What do you guys call the attorney that's in the room? In your process? The facilitator, okay? So you guys are gonna have a facilitator in the room. And the facilitator, my understanding, is an attorney or a judge. And so they probably look like this, right? So, do you guys get nervous about speaking in front of them? So this is different, right? Because this is not like the one-on-one phone call to your witness. This is actually then presenting your entire case, presenting your arguments, eliciting testimony and doing all that in front of somebody who probably looks a little bit like this. I'm just kidding, I might be your facilitator, and then you wouldn't be nervous, right? A little less. Okay, no, we're still gonna be nervous. Okay, so I want you guys to, I know if you're thinking that it's gonna be like this, and if you're worried about somebody kind of bearing down on you and yelling at you, when you're in court, the judge does sit up high, and they are terrifying because they're in their black robe, they're very serious. Sometimes there's a lot of yelling going on. That certainly happens. Here's my advice to you as far as public speaking. Number one, you need to know you're not alone. So I found this little graphic, and I just copied and pasted it right in there because it says it better than I could. So the fear of public speaking is known as glossophobia. I think there's only 2 of you that raised your hand and said that you actually like it. So for the rest of you, maybe you're somewhere in between liking it and having full-blown glossophobia. But if you're here, you're probably somewhere in that spectrum, right? 74% of people suffer from speech anxiety. It's 73% of men and 75% of women. And 5.3 million Americans, which is a ton of people, have a social phobia, and 3.2 million Americans have a fear of crowded public places. And I thought this was so interesting. Public speaking is the greatest fear that people have, and it's even greater than their fears about spiders and death. That's wild, right? So the first thing you guys should know, if you're scared to public speak, you're certainly not alone. Whoever, if you're looking like to your left, to your right, not to your right, because she loves it. But everyone else is probably a little bit terrified of public speaking as well. Yes, I know, a little nervous, right? All right, here's my advice to you when you're public speaking. I don't get nervous anymore, at all, ever. I could even go in front of a judge. It doesn't matter, it's a little different because it's a little more formal. But I speak in front of, I told you guys one time, a couple years ago, I spoke in front of 1,600 lawyers, tough crowd. You guys are kind of a tough crowd. You don't really laugh at my jokes very much, but that's a tougher crowd, right? Lawyers are not always the nicest people. And so I don't get nervous anymore. And the reason I don't get nervous, and what I want you guys to try and start doing, is I think of public speaking the same way as telling your friends a story. So I want you guys to go back before you had cell phones. So how old were you guys when you guys got a cell phone? Any volunteers?
I don't have.
You don't have a cell. Fine. Okay. How old are you? 12. I didn't get a cell phone until I was 15, and I was like the last of all my friends to get a cell phone. Does anybody else not have one? Oh, you guys all have cell phones. I'm sorry. You're gonna have one soon, I trust. But your parents are smart to not give you a cell phone, right? So for those of you that have a cell phone, how old are you? Any volunteers? Somebody I haven't heard from. I heard hi. How old are you when you got your cell phone? Go ahead and say it out loud. Do you even remember? You were so young, you don't even remember.
Probably like 11, 12.
Okay. Do you remember before you were an 11 or 12-year-old with a cell phone, like telling your friends a story? Like on the playground at school. Any memories of that?
Really?
No? When you communicate with your friends now, is it all just texting them the story?
Pretty much, or just talking about like whatever.
Yeah, but like texting it, not face to face, right?
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
It's pretty much the same thing, face to face.
Yeah. And so when you would tell your friends a story though, face to face, do you still do that sometimes?
Yeah, I do.
And what's your name?
Alex.
Alex. So when you tell your friends a story face to face, you get nervous.
Kind of like when I start to stumble and whatnot.
Even if it's your closest friends.
Not to them.
Not to them, right? It's easy when it's your closest friends, right?
Yeah,
Do you find that you stumble less when it's your closest friends?
I do.
And that's because you're probably not nervous, right?
Yeah.
You're not stumbling now. You're doing great. So, when you tell a story to your closest friends, you're not nervous, right?
Yeah.
And you don't stumble. Why do you think that is?
Probably because I know them more.
Yeah, and it's not scary, right? Is it that you know them more and you know they won't judge you?
Probably.
Yeah, like they're gonna, they like you already, right, your friends? Yeah, so what do you have to be nervous about, right? Okay, thank you guys. So I want you guys to think about when you're speaking in this tribunal fashion, right? And you have your big scary judge or facilitator, an attorney or a real judge, and you have all these people staring at you. I want you to dispel yourselves of this idea that you're speaking in front of a bunch of strangers. The cool thing is you guys are all in this together. You guys see all these familiar faces. And so when you're speaking, I want you to find somebody else in the room that you know, somebody else that you are familiar with, and I want you to focus on them. And when you're telling your story, just talk to them, right? And so maybe, like we've spoken now a little bit about mock trial and things like that, and so if I'm presenting, and you are my only familiar face, and I'm pretty confident that you're not gonna judge me, I'm gonna only really tell my story towards you. Sometimes if you're in like a really big area, you just kind of like look past them and pretend you're talking to the next person, but you can't see anything. You're on a big stage with that many people, honestly. You know how they say like after the first row you can't see anybody anyway? That is true, which is actually very helpful. So whoever's in the front row, hopefully they're not making faces at you, because you're not gonna see anybody anyway. So I try to just pretend like I'm just telling a story to a bunch of friends. So I came in front of all you guys, I didn't know a single person, and it was easy for me because I just kind of pretended in my head that I already know you guys. I don't have to be fearful. I'm gonna tell a story to you guys the same way that I would tell it to my friends, even though I'm pretty sure you guys are judging me just a little bit, right? And that's okay, but you guys are probably polite enough to not say it to my face, because that's how we are as humans, so I'm gonna look past it and pretend like I'm just talking to friends. So if you think about it like that, when you walk into an environment, don't think about it as you're like on show and you have to give this phenomenal presentation. Don't think about it like that. Think about it as you're just telling a story to your friends, and that's it, okay? Now, let's go over some tips. Number one, it is so normal to be nervous. So when I walk in, I'm gonna be honest with you, I don't get nervous anymore, but at the beginning, I used to get so nervous. Now, I film almost every Wednesday, I film video content, so if you flip that thing on, I can probably pump out, like one time, 17 videos in an hour. I can just go, I don't stumble, it's very easy for me, but that took years and years and years of practice to get there. For years, I was so nervous. If you would have flipped on a camera, I would have forgotten absolutely everything that I was going to say. The first several videos I did, I had a script. They would actually hold it behind me. We're like too poor for a teleprompter at the office, so they would hold big giant pieces of paper and I would try and read it. We did all those types of things. It took me a long time to get to that point. So if you're nervous still, it's very normal to be nervous. You should also know that whoever has to speak after you or before you, they were nervous too. All of you are going to be nervous. All right, so next one, you should know your audience. So I always say this is a dear friend said this to me, communication is for the other side, it's not for you. So when you're talking, you should know who your audience is. I'm gonna like myself on these things. So you should know who your audience is. If you are trying to convince, for example, if you're on a mock trial team and you're trying to convince a panel of 3 judges, right? You know that you have your presiding judge, which is always what I want to be, because I want to talk. I don't want to like just score people. You have your scoring judges. You know your presiding judge. Yeah, that judge might get mad at you. They're not scoring you, right? Your scoring judges, that's who matter in the room. When you are talking, the facilitator is going to be the one that's going to be handing down the recommendation or handing down like the sentencing or whatever's going to happen to your client, to your youth. And so you want to be talking to that person. So if your audience is like, what if it's a teacher, your argument about a school fight is going to be so totally different than the argument that you're going to make in front of one of your, like another kid who was like watching it and videoing it and putting it on Facebook, or sorry you guys don't do Facebook anymore, whatever you guys do, Snapchat, or Be Real. They just told me about this. Do you guys do Be Real?
Not
See,
anymore.
I'm not crazy. Not anymore, it's over. Okay, that's good to know. So so if you're talking to a teacher, they're gonna have a completely different perception of that fight. They're gonna think it's so much more serious than maybe the person who was just videoing it and uploading it on Snapchat later, who knows, right? And so the way that we're gonna communicate is gonna be so different. So you need to know who your audience is, really quickly identify who your audience is, and then format accordingly, okay? Number 3, write everything, write everything that you intend and want to say word for word. That's the first thing you should do. Then you should turn it into an outline, like a bullet point of it, and then you should only memorize your outline. There are some occasions where you want to memorize every single thing that you want to say. There are certainly parts in argument over the years where every word that I said really truly mattered. But the vast majority of the time, it's not like that. The vast majority of the time, I'm just trying to get out my bullet point, and I just want to explain the bullet point. You never want to read. In mock trial, if I'm a judge and I have to score, and you are reading, you're opening in front of me, you are not going to score well. So we never read from a piece of paper. If I were standing in front of you right now, and the whole time I was behind that podium staring like this, how engaged would you guys be? Not, right? You would have been like, probably on whatever thing is on your laptop, right? Like you would have been totally checked out and bored. So you have to memorize whatever it is that you want to say, and you want to do it in a condensed fashion. So write everything down, then condense it into an outline. Do you guys know what an outline is? Okay. And then from there, just memorize the outline. So framing, and I don't mean like a picture frame. So who here loves like, can I see your Instagram? Your TikTok? Okay. Who here loves like, I can watch TikTok for like 3 hours and then forget that I've been watching it for 3 hours? And there are some videos that immediately catch your attention, and there are others that you just scroll, right? It used to be the case that when we were talking about public speaking, we would say that you have to really capture your audience in the first few minutes. That has completely changed with your generation. Really, my generation started it, your generation's really picking up speed. Now, it's like less argument, you have to have the hook first, okay? So let's say hypothetically, your case, you represent the community, you're the community advocate, and it's a fight. So the charge is a fray. I can't even remember what the statute is. It's really poorly written. That's all I remember, because it's like a fight in a public setting in a school that causes like mass terror to everybody else, which we know doesn't happen because they're all videoing it, no one's terrorized. But that's what the actual statute says. It's poorly written. And so let's say that you're the community advocate in that case, and you are advocating on behalf of everybody who was terrorized, the whole school, everything was disrupted. What would your hook be to get everyone's attention in the room at the very beginning? When you're laying out your case and sheet. Anyone? No? Okay, well, how about something like this? If you heard something like, maybe like the whole thing lasted like an hour and a half, right? An hour and a half is 90 minutes. 90 minutes sounds way longer than an hour and a half, would we all agree? So what if you started off by saying 90 minutes? It was 90 minutes that no student was allowed to go to class, that students were robbed of the ability to learn, whatever. So right off the bat, you guys are interested in 90 minutes. You might be calculating in your head how long is 90 minutes. It seems like a long time. How long are your classes? Like 55 minutes? Yeah, so 90 minutes is kind of a long time. It's longer than an entire class. So now you have 2 entire classes that you guys were all disrupted from. So you have to think of how do you lay out the story the best and most effective way possible? Remember your hook. Anybody here like telling jokes? Okay, do you know what the punchline is? What a punchline is?
Yeah.
Yeah, what's a punchline? You have to stand up and introduce yourself all over again. You have some co-counsel there next to you that raise your hand too, so go ahead.
Okay, my name is Alex, and basically like the punchline is like you hit them with an opening joke. It's like a warm-up show.
Yeah. And then what about what the punchline? Do you like? What's your name? Ivy. So co-counsel Ivy, you like telling jokes too?
Kind of.
Okay. So tell us, what kind of jokes do you like to tell?
Usually just dad jokes.
Dad jokes. I love dad jokes. Okay. Do you have a good dad joke for us right now?
Why do seals swim in salt water?
Wow.
Because pepper water makes them silly.
Okay, that's cute. All right. So the punchline is the second part, right? Am I right about that? Okay. So the punchline is the second part. So if you think of, if you like to tell jokes, if you were to tell the punchline first, would it ruin the joke? Yes, it would. So when you think about framing, you want to lead, you have to have the hook at the beginning, but you really want to end on the good part. So think of the punchline, except this is serious, so we're not telling jokes in court. But you have to have, you want to make sure that you're placing the punchline at the right point. If you say the punchline too soon, ruins the whole joke, it's all over, nobody's going to get it anyway. So when we talk about framing, remember your hook and remember where things like your punchline would go. All right, so next one, number 5, watch for feedback clues from your audience. So for me, I am starting to lose my hearing. So if I were sitting in your audience and I couldn't hear you, you might know because I would be fiddling with my hearing aids, or I would be like this. I'd be like craning my good ear to you, trying to see if I can understand you more. So if you see somebody doing something like that, or if you see somebody and they look confused, you should pivot your argument immediately and make sure that they understand. So sometimes when we are giving, for example, like a closing argument in jury trial, and if I know that that one person on my jury is not understanding, I can just tell on their face that they're confused, or I can tell on their face that they really like what I'm saying. I'm gonna make a bigger deal about that, right? Because I know I have them. So pay attention to the body language that your audience members are doing, and go ahead and be able to really compare it. If they can't hear you, if they don't understand, make sure that you are addressing that. One thing that I like to do when I'm speaking, especially to a crowd like this, if I feel like people are bored, and you guys might have noticed this, I will like come a little closer to you and make eye contact with you. You immediately perk up, like, oh crap, I should be paying attention to this, right? So that's something that you guys can use too. It's an effective way to kind of get your audience engaged. All right, maintain eye contact. This is so hard, especially I think for your generation, it's not your fault. You guys spend a lot more time in front of a computer and in front of your phone than my generation did, but my generation's pretty bad too. And so it's so important to maintain eye contact. You guys actually in this room are pretty darn good at it. All of you are. Maintaining eye contact is an engagement tool. When I'm talking about that, you don't want to make anybody feel uncomfortable. Thank you. Sorry I made you uncomfortable. So next, use body language to communicate. So very common, we call these prayer hands, right? To do something like this when you're talking, to clutch your hands and clasp your hands. It's really common if you're holding a pen and you fidget, right? You like flick the pen. If you're doing anything, all these types of things are really nervous hand gestures. I'm a big talker. I like to use a lot of expression. Whenever I am in court and whenever I'm telling a story and I want to be really impactful, I try to utilize body language into it, right? And